Okay, here are the notes for 5.10b, distributing radicals. This is the first lesson for our new unit. It's basically an extension of multiplying radicals. So I'm going to do number 1 first, and then I want you to pause the video and try 2 and 3 by yourself. So the left side of this page is a single distributive property where you're just distributing one thing. And the right side is you're distributing two things. This is known as double distributive property, or we also sometimes call it FOIL. So we're going to work on the left side of the page first. So in number 1, we're just distributing one thing. It's this radical 2. Remember, you have to distribute it to both terms inside the parentheses. Remember also that when multiplying, you multiply the insides together and you multiply the outsides together. So I don't see any numbers on the outside of the radical, and when that happens, it's implied that it's a 1 is the coefficient. So if you're multiplying those outsides together, it's 1, which you don't have to write, and then the insides are the 2 times the 18. So instead of actually doing the math and making that 36, here's what I'm going to do instead, because I want the factors of those things. So the first number is 2. And then it's going to be times the 18. I'm going to go ahead and factor that partially right now into 2 times 9. Now, if I wanted to continue factoring the 9 into 3 times 3, I totally could do that. That's fine. But here's why I'm going to stop right here. Because 9 is a perfect square, and I'm taking the square root of it. So the square root of 9 is 3, and I have a pair of 2's here, and I pull out 1, 2 for that. And then whatever you're pulling out, you multiply back together. So 2 times 3 is 6. And there's nothing left inside the radical, so the radical is just gone. All right, so now let's distribute the 2 into the second term, the 4 radical 3. So that's a positive times a positive gives me positive. The outsides are 1 and 4, so multiplying that is 4. And the insides are 2 times 3. So there's no more factoring that I can do here, no factor trees. There's no pairs to pull out. So if you can't simplify anymore, you're just going to multiply it back together. So this is plus 4 square roots of 6. And then we're done here. Now today during class, a lot of students wanted to do 6 plus 4 is 10. But remember, when you're adding radicals, you have to have like terms. You can only add things that have square roots of 6 on them. Like, for example, I could do 6 square roots of 6 plus 4 square roots of 6. The radicand, the stuff inside, stays the same, and you do math on the coefficients. Because you're basically saying I have 6 square roots of 6, I'm adding 4 more square roots of 6. So I have 10 square roots of 6 altogether. And that's something we did in the last unit. So if you need to refresh that, you can go look at those past lessons. So take a minute and pause the video and try 2 and 3 on your own. All right, so in number 2, I'm distributing the square root of 5 to the 2 square roots of 10. Remember, there's an implied 1 outside here. So multiplying my outsides gives me 1 times 2, which is 2. And the insides is 5 times 10. So I'm going to put down my 5, and then I'm going to factor that 10 into 5 times 2. And now I will distribute that to the second term. That's a positive times a positive, which is a positive. The outsides are 1 times 3. The insides are 5 times 2. So in the first radical, I have a pair of 5's. And I'm going to pull 1 5 out. And I already have a 2 out front, so those get multiplied together, 10 square roots of 2. And nothing simplifies in the second radical, so it's going to stay like this. And I cannot combine in the next step because the radicands, the stuff inside, doesn't match. So we just leave it alone. And then for number 3, I'm going to distribute the square root of 6. So the outsides are just 1's. So I'm just going to stay 1 on the outside, which means I'm not going to write it. I'm going to factor this 6 into 2 times 3. And then this second 3 comes from the second radical. And then distribute the square root of 6 to the second term. So the outsides of the radical 6 is 1, times the outsides of this one is 5. So 1 times 5 is 5. And then the insides are, this 6 is 3 times 2, and then this other 2 comes from the second radical. So I'm looking for my pairs now. In the first radical, I have a pair of 3's that I'm going to pull out. So that leaves me 3 square roots of 2. And in the second radical, I have a pair of 2's. I'm going to pull out 1. That gets multiplied by the 5 in front. So that is 10 square roots of 3. And because the radicands don't match, I can't do any more math here. So I am done. All right. So all those problems just had one single term to distribute. The problems on the right have 2 terms to distribute. So I have a 2 square roots of 3 that I need to distribute, and I have a negative square root of 5 that I need to distribute. This is also where FOIL comes from, because the first terms get multiplied, the outside terms get multiplied, the inside terms, and the last terms. So I'm going to do the first terms here, 2 radical 3 times radical 10. So that gives me 2. And inside my radical, I have the 3 times the 10, which I'm going to factor so that I can look for pairs. There are no pairs, so just multiply them back together, and it's going to be 2 radical 30. So now I'm distributing that 2 radical 3 to this 4 radical 6. That's my outside terms. So do the 2 times the 4 is 8 positives. That's a positive 8. And then the 3 times the 6, which I'm going to factor as 3 times 2. So now there's a pair of 3's here. So I'm going to bring out 1 and then times that 8 in front. So that is 24 square roots of 2. So that was my first term and my outside terms. So now I'm going to look at this negative square root of 5 and distribute that. So negative square root of 5 times the square root of 10, that's my inside terms. So now that's a negative times a positive. That's going to give me a negative number. And then the 5 and the 10 I'm going to factor as 5 times 2. There's a pair of 5's. I'm going to bring 1 out. And that gives me minus 5 square roots of 2. And then I will take that negative square root of 5 now and distribute it to this 4 square roots of 6. That's the L in FOIL for the last terms. So the number out front here is an implied 1. The number out front here is 4. So 1 times 4 is 4. Now this one's negative 1. This one's positive 4. So that gives me a negative 4. And then this radicand is a 5. This 6 can factor into 2 times 3. There are no pairs in there, so I just multiply them back together and it makes 30. So now what's different in these problems is I have some terms I can combine with addition, subtraction. So when you're adding or subtracting radicals, you look for radicands that match. And then you do the math on the number in front, the coefficients. So I have these square roots of 30's match. You're just doing the math on this and this. So 2 minus 4 is negative 2 square roots of 30. And then these both have square roots of 2. You're just doing math on the coefficients. 24 minus 5 is 19. And then square roots of 2. So pause the video and try 5 and 6 before you watch the rest. All right, so number 5, we are going to start by distributing this 4. So 4 times 4 is 16. 4 times negative radical 5 gives me negative 4 radical 5. Now distribute square root of 5. That gives me positive 4 square root of 5. And then positive 5 times negative, or positive radical 5 times negative. So that's negative radical 5 times 5. So if you notice the two middle terms, both have radical 5s, and it's a negative 4 and a positive 4. Those cancel out. And then in this radical, there's a pair of 5s, so I pull out 1, and there's nothing left in the radical. So it's just 5, and that combines with the 16 and makes 11. And then for this last problem, distribute 2 square roots of 10 to 3 square roots of 3. The outsides are 2 times 3, which is 6. And the insides are 10 times 3. So 10 is 2 times 5, and then times that 3. There's no pairs in there, so we're just going to multiply all those back together. 2 times 5 times 3. So that rewrites as 6 square roots of 30. Then distribute 2 radical 10 to negative 2 radical 2. So the outsides are 2 times negative 2, that's a negative 4. And 10 is 2 times 5 times this 2 over here. So there's a pair of 2's. I'm going to bring out 1 and then multiply by the negative 4 in front. So negative 8 square roots of 5. So I'm done distributing 2 square roots of 10. Now I need to distribute 3 square roots of 15. So 3 times 3 is 9. And then the insides, I'm going to factor 15 as 3 times 5. And then times this 3 inside this radical. So I have a pair of 3's. Bring out 1, multiply by that 9, and that's going to give me plus 27 square roots of 5. And now do 3 square roots of 15 times negative 2 square roots of 2. So that's positive 3 times negative 2 is negative 6. And 15 is 3 times 5 times that 2. Nothing, there's no pairs, so nothing cancels, so multiply it all back together. All right, so here's what I'm looking at. I kind of got off track here, but these both have radical 30, so I can combine them. Their coefficients are 6 and negative 6, so that makes 0. So those cancel. And then I have negative 8 radical 5 plus 27 radical 5. Remember, you're just doing math on the coefficients. 27 minus 8 is 19 square roots of 5. And that's it.